There comes a point in a man's life where he needs to start accepting how big his meat is. I've accepted my fate. Have you? Jeep's on the lift and the big meats have arrived. But for those of you who watch regularly, you know I've been looking to go up to a 37, mainly because of the snow stuff I do in the winter, or what I like to do anyway. I've been on the 35, it's been going pretty well. The ones on there are Cooper ST Max PORs, and it's been a really good tyre. Obviously siped, grooved, studded them, tried to make them better, and they did actually appear to be a lot better, but they're about 5 years old now. They've hardened up a little bit. I want a bigger tyre, I want a bigger footprint, because the snow does get pretty deep. Now obviously none of the tyres I'm showing in this video are actually winter tyres. Let me put this out straight away. A real big difference between driving on winter roads and doing winter driving and driving on deep snow and playing out in the woods and stuff like that. You know, those are two completely different things, and I don't want to get that mixed up. These tyres I've got here, these are not winter tyres. They are in no way, shape or form a winter tyre in any way. I will groove them, and I've got my tyre groover just on the bench over there. And to be fair, you can make tyres perform a lot better in snow with them. It is a fun thing to have if you're, you know, if it's that's your hobby and you're into that kind of thing. But I haven't actually introduced the tyre. This is a Maxxis tyre, an M8060 37 1250 R16. It's a mud tyre, and it's probably the last tyre you really want for the kind of stuff I want to do. You really want to be floating on snow, not digging through it. But there comes a point with snow, with driving in deep snow, where the size of the footprint kind of outweighs the tread pattern, if you know what I mean. So I'm really just trying to do what I can with the options available to me. There is no other tyre available in Sweden where I live of this size, for that size rim. It just doesn't exist. The only tyre, the only real true winter tyre for snow flotation available here is the Arctic Trucks AT38. I think it's almost £2,000 for me to get one tyre where I'm living, and I can't really justify that to the wife just yet. She's not up for eating baked beans and living in a cardboard box just yet. But at least the Jeep would look good next to the box. That's kind of what I keep telling her. But anyway, gonna get these installed, and then I'm gonna take a look at grooving and studding, because the studs might be here today. Was not fun. So there it is, big boys on tour. Basically, I understand I've mounted the tyre in reverse. That there is a reason for that, and it's to do with what a number of people have told me about this particular tyre in deep snow and its performance when, you know, flipped the other way. But it doesn't matter at this point. I haven't balanced it yet and done any of that stuff, because I'm going to be grooving the tyre and then I'm going to be drilling metal studs into it. As you can see, it fits great, but I'm a bit gutted the little chrome caps don't fit. But I'm also kind of then feeling a bit more secure that it's wrapped straight around that unit bearing, sort of like the tightest fit you could ever want, right? Right? Anyway, let's fit more.
Whoa, they're cool.
Do you think?
Yeah, they're massive.
Yeah. Got to make up for something, haven't I?
Look at them bad boys.
Yeah, they're a bit aggressive though.
How do you think that's going to sound on the road?
Savage. It's going to sound
Everyone's
terrible.
going to have ear defenders on.
We
We're
now
gonna be
we've got
vibrating.
even more of an excuse not to talk with the kids screaming. It's gonna deaden out the children.
Maybe they'll get lulled to sleep by the
Yeah,
sound of
that actually will
the
happen.
tyres.
Absolute bitch to get on.
Fits good. Fits real good. Yeah. As it goes up, it'll go back, and as it goes down, it'll go forward. So that's perfect. It actually looks better than the 35 in there.
Well, Sam.
That went well. Best one out of the 4. Good job I got that on camera, right? Because yeah, that's what it's all about. Pretending you're good at what you're doing. Mate, you know, basically how I've made it this far, really. There it is, on its own weight. It's a nice fit. Actually looks pretty good in the arch, so it's quite nicely centred, so it should be. Coil's screwed, but sort that out in due course. And the back, surprisingly, I thought I'd have major troubles with it, but that's a pretty good fit. Like I say, like as it goes up, this gap closes, and as it goes down, that gap closes. So, I mean, you know, that's a good thing. So it's in a decent spot. Nice ZJ. That'll probably look the same in a year's time. That has definitely got more ground clearance now. Only a tiny amount, but whether or not that really makes a massive difference in snow, I'm not sure, but that Jeep is looking pretty mean now. With no air in it at all, it's like a tank track. You don't really want it like that. Not really in snow anyway, it's just going to start digging. I mean, like how it behaves on a 10-inch rim, it probably behave a bit better. On an 8-inch wide rim, it's looking a little janky. I'm going to put some air in it. I think half a bar, so like 5 psi, sorry, or something like that, is probably going to be where I want it to be if I'm going to air it down to its minimum, because it is quite a hard tyre. I think I'm going to have to get a real low tyre pressure gauge. I love a bit of bulge, and that's sort of a healthy amount of bulge for that tyre and wheel setup, really. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's a longer footprint than the 35 to 12.5, but I need to test it this winter, really. So I've just picked up some new blades for the groover. You can see this is kind of what I'm looking for in terms of like the depth and the width, and you can kind of see they're dovetailed, and they're going to be like that because of the way the blades are. It's hard to get it right though. I really, before I start chopping into these brand new Maxxis tyres, I need to dial in the groover, and it needs to be working pretty consistently, because this here is you know, it's a nice clean cut, but you can see it's not what I'm looking for. It's a bit too wide, really. Whether it's that one there is exactly what I'd be looking for. And I'm probably going to do the same kind of pattern on the Maxxis tyres, really, where you're just kind of like crisscrossing. So you're going along there like that, then along there, then along there, then along there, you know, but obviously I've screwed this up because I'm just playing about with it, but it is just a spare. So with a tyre like this, there's going to be a lot of road noise, and there's definitely a lot of road noise with this. It's not a huge amount louder than it was before, but it's pretty damn loud. It's nicer to have the window open. Just let the noise out, you know, rather than being in a tin can. But yeah, it drives great. I mean, I'm on 488 gears, obviously diesel engine. You know, you guys know what I've done to the engine if you follow the channel. So you know, there's no real. It doesn't really feel like I've lost any power or torque, if you know what I mean. With the 488 gears, actually, it's driving way nicer than it did with the 35s, and now my speedo is pretty much bang on. So there's that.
So there she is with her big meats on. It's looking good. I mean, like, some would argue that looks are a big part of it. It's looking really good. I think the tyres don't look oversized either. That was one thing I was kind of wondering when I put the tyres on, is would they look too big for the vehicle? And they actually don't. They fit the wheel wells really well, and the vehicle actually looks sort of built for purpose, like the tyres are of a good size. You'll have to excuse my voice. I'm freezing and I've got my special shoes on. I actually left my Mendels at home and I just came out for a quick drive, and that quick drive turned into total shit. But anyway, back to the tyres. Like, on the road they're a bit noisier, to be expected, right? Because it is a mud terrain. It's a hard tyre, so you really have to take out almost all the air and get them down to about 5 psi to really start to notice like proper sort of adequate deformation in the tyre. It's a digging tyre. It's a tough mud terrain digging tyre, and like I said at the beginning of the video, it's probably one of the last tyres you'd really want to choose for snow flotation. But maybe in the early seasons of winter, when you've got snow kind of halfway up the tyre and a hard base underneath the snow, it's going to be a really good tyre for that, because you're going to be floating on some of it but sort of gripping and cutting through it. So we'll see how that goes, if I can get the diff repaired. But what happened is my friend, I say, yeah, he's a good friend of mine, but he's also my boss. He's a machine operator, and he was working out there, and he wanted me to bring him a load of fuel. So I went to the workshop, picked up some cans. I did actually fly the drone up there and just check, and it looked okay. But I drove in and it felt really good and it was going really well. And then suddenly, like, this bog came out of nowhere and just swallowed the 37 like it was nothing. And the problem is because that road's pretty old, or that track they've made's pretty old. You've got some hard bits and then you've got a lump in the middle, but then you've got these runoffs at the side. And I went over the edge into the runoff because you can't really see the track anymore. And basically, yeah, it was an absolute nightmare. So I tried to put it in reverse to come back out, and the diff blew up immediately with the locker on. If I'd have left it unlocked, it probably would have been okay. We jacked up the vehicle because like, he's recovered me now and we're out of here, and he's gone actually. So, but the rest of the track is fine. But I've jacked up the vehicle on a bottle jack, and we've checked the tyres. Both axle shafts are fine. Both U-joints are fine. The stub shafts are fine. There's no noise coming from the diff, but you can rotate the prop shaft under the vehicle when it's in two-wheel drive completely freely, which you shouldn't be able to do because it should be binding on the ring gear, like the ring and pinion. I think I've sheared the pinion completely, which is a pretty severe break. Well, it's a couple of days on from that incident, and I've got the Jeep on the lift. This is just here to take the stress off some of the poly bushings and stuff and get the axle up so it's not hanging. And I do get a lot of questions of why the axle goes this way when the vehicle's lifted. It's basically just the track bar and the drag link are different lengths. It's not really a big issue actually, you know, unless you want the suspension to be travelling vertically up and down. But when it's articulating like that, it's not really a massive problem. But yeah, ideally that should be mounted further over here. It's just, you know, there's not a lot of space. But I think I know what's happened, and I'm going to show you. But first I'm just going to show you a couple of things, and we're going to get to the diagnosis. So this is the long side axle shaft, and this was always my weak spot, or what I wanted to be my weak spot. And in fact, it's got a really crappy, cheap U-joint in it. And the point was that I wanted it to break, or at least I wanted this shaft to break. You can already see it's beginning to fail. I put this in a year ago, and it isn't surprising. So on the short side, I've got a chromoly, and this is a 5760X U-joint. I believe that's what it is. So it's a really tough U-joint. There's no movement in it. It's still good. And this was meant to be the one that didn't fail and basically would be intact. It's not the weak link, obviously. Going back to the scenario, I think I just got kind of unlucky, really. And if I hadn't have locked the diff, I would have been fine. If I'd have left it open, it would have sent the bells. So I've just locked the locker, and I've had to turn the carrier manually because, well, I thought the pinion had sheared in half, and I'm completely wrong. Now I'm turning that. You have got the drive shaft moving. And that explains something to me, because when I was in that ditch and I heard that breakage and I switched the locker off, I sort of shit myself for a bit. And once I'd kind of like cleaned it up, I put the locker back on and I started to move pretty well. I guess one wheel was still going. So I'm completely wrong about what just happened. One thing I need to say as well is this happened ages ago. This is really old, this brake. This is 2 years ago, and I couldn't be asked to replace the ring and pinion, so I just kind of tidied the edges up and went from there. But you can actually see a new chip just there, where maybe I just caught it in a bad spot and it was under pressure, and we got a slight new chip. So I'm gonna have to sort of get a torch up there and just check that. But there isn't any metal in the oil, and the oil actually looks pretty good. So I might have gotten away with this. It's a moment of truth. Forgive the earphones, it gets too loud, getting old. Bearing's nice. But this is it, let's see what comes out. Oh no. Oh. Hey door, Spliny McSplinison. A long one isn't always a strong one. If that's what I was going to take away from this, that's words to live and die by, guys, girls too. So I'm trying to get this out now because I have to, because the piece of the spline is in there. Tried to pull it out with a magnet, but it's impossible to really get it past the oil seal because the magnet would have to be extremely strong. But the problem I'm having is I have to push the piece of the shaft, the spline, in as far as I can really. So I'm using a magnet pen on the end to push it in and then pull this carrier out. The piece of the shaft is caught on that lip. Yeah, so here it comes, that's great. The oil seal actually looks completely fine. There's just a few tiny pieces that have now dropped out. I just need to inspect that properly to make sure it hasn't been chopped in any way, shape or form, but it looks all right. Well, I've kind of been itching to find out what was wrong, and I mean, it's just, to be honest, it isn't a great picture. The brake was in a pretty shit position. If I was to fix that out in the woods, that would be a pretty difficult job to do with the tools I carry. I mean, I can lift one side of the vehicle and I can take all the stuff out and put a new shaft in, but when it's broken that far in, obviously it makes it a bit tricky because you then have to disassemble both sides to get it out, or have some absolute beast of a magnet to pull it past the oil seal, but then the oil seal's screwed anyway. But at least you're getting home without doing too much disassembly, to only then have to disassemble and reassemble again
to probably change the oil seal. But the point being is like that, it's that chip on the ring gear that got bigger that really is what concerns me the most. The broken shaft is, you know, that's great, that's kind of what I wanted. That was the weak link. It broke. It didn't break in the best position, but you know, it still did its job. But like looking at that chip, I've obviously taken a carbide bit and I've taken the sharp edges off of it so it's as smooth as it can be. I mean, that's really all you can do with those sorts of chips. And it is looking like that chipped tooth is sort of getting to a point where I'm not really feeling massively comfortable with it. The pinion looks fine, there's no markings on it, and it looks okay, but you know, it is getting to a point where I'd probably be more comfortable replacing that. It's just the issue is you know, I'm then throwing more money into the Dana 30. You know, I built that Dana 30 up as much as I wanted to, and you know, I was on a 35, and a 35 I think with this setup has been great really for the last 4 years, but obviously like putting it on a 37, it's a much bigger tyre, it's kind of taken it to its limits. And I do know of a lot of people who run a Dana 30 on a 37, but I think it depends how you drive, it depends what you do with it. Do I want to put more money into a ring gear and rebuild up that Dana 30 again, or should I take that money and should I get another axle? I've looked online and a Dana 44 in Europe is so expensive. You know, they want the equivalent of like, they just want a lot of money for it. So you're already paying a lot of money for a scrap heap Dana 44. And then you're going to have to put more money into it again. You're going to need a new ring and pinion, like a 488. Maybe you want to do a locker at the same time. And then you're going to need to think about axle shafts, and then you're going to want to reinforce it anyway, because you know, the Dana 44 that I'd be looking at, or the ones I've looked at for this Cherokee, you know, all the components are the same as the 30, but you just do have a bigger ring and pinion. So I'm not really gaining anything by going over to a Dana 44. It isn't, for me, enough of like an upgrade to really go ring around the rosy again with all these fucking upgrades and get stuck into it. Tons of money, loads of fabrication work to kind of end up with something that's kind of running pretty much the same shafts and everything else that this 30 is, the same housing and everything, for just a bigger ring and pinion. I don't know, this is where I kind of call upon the expertise of people out there who watch my channel, who know a lot more about this than me and haven't fallen asleep yet at this point in the video, because I appreciate it's been pretty long-winded and it's kind of been all over the place, but that's just real life at the end of the day. And you know, like I say, I don't claim to be an expert at this, you know, and I do appreciate the advice that people give me. And I know a lot of you have said, oh, well, just don't run it on a Dana 30. Well, you know, you have to factor in I live in Europe and my options are really limited. The only axle really I could go to on the front end that would actually be cost effective is a Nissan Patrol axle. That would be the only thing that I could really do, and that would probably set me back about 800 euros. Then I would need to take the tubes out of the pumpkin, I'd need to flip them, and then I'd basically rotate the C's and do the pinion at the same time, the pinion angle, because why not while you're there? And then you rebuild the whole thing and just kind of buy some parts for it. You don't actually have to upgrade the shafts or anything. You can run a 42 on a Nissan Patrol axle. That's pretty much what people say its limit is, as stock components. So they're really tough. They're really tough, but you know, I think I'm going to do it, but it's just the long game. And really I'd want to buy one that had the calipers and everything, so I'm buying it and it's just like a complete axle in a relatively good condition, without me having to do too much to it. So that would be the long game, but short term I'm probably going to just reassemble this with a new shaft. That ring and pinion, I'm just going to run it and see what happens this winter. And I just probably am looking, the advice I'm looking for is, in terms of planning in a weak link, what would you do? Like, would you run a CV on the long side? Because I mean, that chromoly on the short side, that's going to be there for a long time, and I don't think it's going to break. And if I engage the locker and put it in low range, even with a broken shaft on the long side, I've still got 3-wheel drive, which is better than 2-wheel drive. So, you know, like what would you do? Like, would you run a CV on the long side, so if it breaks, you know it breaks at the tyre end, but then you still can drive it normally, like on the road, and
use 3-wheel drive with the locker on, like what would you do? I think that sounds good to me. And it kind of makes me kind of wonder why people run chromolys both sides. And why would you run like an RCV axle both sides? Because I guess it really then depends on what tyre you're running. Like if you're running a 33, then yeah, I guess chromoly's on both sides and everything's going to work out for you, because you don't have that great big tyre that you know is going to blow something up eventually. But I guess if you wheel hard enough and you're spinning tyres and doing crazy shit, you know, if you're spinning tyres and you get air and they land back down again, surely you've written something off, even with a 33 or a 35, an RCVs or chromolys both sides, you know, that it's just something's got to go. And it's probably most likely going to be a ring and pinion if all the weakness is just, you know, you're putting it all back in the diff again, you know, you're taking it away from the axle shafts and you're putting it back in the diff. But like I say, I'm no expert, I'm just trying to be logical. But like, I'd appreciate your advice if you've made it this far. And I mean advice about my setup currently, not like, hey, well, you know, scrap it and get tons, you know. I can't do that, right? I can't do that here, and it's not going to happen for my setup. So yeah, it probably will be long term. It's going to be Nissan Patrol axles, but whether I don't know really whether I want to replace the Chrysler 8 1/4 29 spline, because you know, like for me to buy a Nissan Patrol axle and convert it and muck around with it on the back, I could quite easily get some like reinforced axle shafts for that, and it would be still a really good axle for what I do, because you know, I'm just plugging around and playing in snow. You know, I'm not climbing up rocks and spinning tyres and landing back down again and, you know, doing all that kind of stuff. But what I will say is, like, with the diesel engine on this, I mean, I can't really tell you off the shelf what it's doing, but like a mate of mine with a similar setup, it's got about 180 horsepower and about 400 newton meters of torque. And I know that doesn't mean shit, because like every engine's different and everything. And in fact, that was with a 10mm pump, and I'm running an 11, which is 20% more fuel anyway. So I might even be a little bit higher than that, I don't know, or less. You just don't know until you put it on a dyno. But every time I've broken something on this Dana 30, I've been crawling at snail speeds. You know, and in this case, I was just reversing, which I appreciate is a weakness in this setup itself. Like, going backwards is always worse than going forwards on a reverse cut setup, but I guess that doesn't mean anything to the axle shaft. But I mean, like, you know, I was reversing and I was just going so slow, and the tyre was just going, and then it just went chunk. So, you know, I think the torque on the diesel is considerably high at low RPM, and I think that is a real issue with this setup as well. You can't really stall that engine. You can put it, you can take your foot off the clutch and it will continue to pull itself over obstacles, which is kind of where the merit of a diesel comes from. But in turn, the problem with that is that these components get a lot of shock load running through them, and they don't like it. So yeah, anyway, I've chatted enough, and this is the end of the video now. Thanks for watching and for making it this far, and stay tuned for the next episode of Guy does stupid shit and doesn't really have the funds to kind of do it right. Yeah, see you soon. Thanks for all your support.